thought we'd just hold things a little bit. Before we get going, I wanted to thank all the folks who make our programming possible: the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the Stewart Family Foundation, the Friends of the Longmont Museum, our many donors, and of course, our museum members. I know you're out there, members, so thank you. Thank you for supporting the Longmont Museum. We couldn't do it without you. We have a lot of stuff going on here at the Longmont Museum in addition to these Thursday nights and our exhibitions. We're expanding. We're just finishing up a big renovation and expansion of our courtyard with a big stage. That's exciting. And we've got a capital campaign going. So if you have any loose change, please feel free to deposit it at the front desk on your way out the door. Tonight, as part of our Voices of Change series, I think it's probably our 10th one or something. We do one in the fall and one in the spring, and they're all dedicated to issues around diversity, equity, and inclusivity. I want to thank the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee for their continued support of this series. We've had a lot of powerful voices in this room, and we've learned a lot. We're so lucky to have so many talented folks, groups, arts organizations in this region, and we're very lucky to have Motus Theater right in our backyard. Award-winning, acclaimed. They were just recognized by the state, officially recognized by the state legislature. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kirsten Wilson and Motus Theater to the Longmont Museum.
You're good. I can use this mic. So hey, I'm cheating. I may have to wait till Justin gets up there, but when you do, I'd love a little house lights just because I'm doing the hosting and I love seeing people. Right now, you guys are a hazy darkness. All right. So good evening. As Justin said, my name is Kirsten Wilson. I have the privilege of being here. Usually our host is Christian Solano Cordova, our amazing outreach and communications and fundraising development director. But I'm here today, and so I'm the founder of Motus. Oh, there you are. Look at the beautiful people. Yay, way back, yay. Right, community, a radical community, wonderful. So I'm the artistic director and founder of Motus Theater. My pronouns are she, her. For those of you who don't know Motus, if you don't Motus, you should stop Motusing. For those of you who don't know Motus Theater, we create original theater to support community conversation on critical issues of our time. We use the power of art to build alliances across diverse segments of our community. A central focus of our work is developing autobiographical monologues with people who are impacted by the injustice and violence within the criminal legal system, immigration system, or otherwise targeted by dehumanizing rhetoric and policies. Motus's monologue projects disrupt dehumanizing narratives, lift up the humanity of monologists, and shed light on the root causes of injustice with the aim of creating a more equitable and humane and inclusive world. Yeah, let's do it. Of course, I want to thank the Longmont Museum for inviting us to be here. I also want to, who else am I thanking? Okay. I want to thank the Longmont Museum. We're going to share 3 monologues today from Motus Theater's new Transformative Stories autobiographical monologue project. There are 5 other stories in this group, so keep paying attention. You don't want to miss any of them. They're all totally different and totally have medicine for everyone. We're all oppressed by gender in different ways, whether you know it or not. We all are, and it's so liberating to be part of these conversations. The Transformative Stories Project aims to uplift the humanity of transgender and non-binary leaders by presenting artfully crafted personal stories about their hopes, dreams, and experiences of negotiating oppression and liberation. Before we begin, Motus wants to acknowledge that, of course, we're gathering on the occupied, unceded territory, an ancestral homeland of the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne. And furthermore, much of this country's wealth was built not only on stolen land, but the stolen labor of formerly enslaved African Americans and the exploitation of many different peoples and a lot of ancestors of folks that are in this room. It's only by acknowledging the mistakes of our past and investing in the equity and reparations that we can work to build a more just future for all of us. So, let's take a few deep breaths together. Breathing, 1. Out. Another breath. One more in our humanity, our lives. Whew. Awesome. I love to hear y'all breathing. So today we're excited to have Dr. Morgan Henry Seamont, Ray Watson, and Ruby Lopez, who will be sharing their monologues from Motus Theater's Transformative Stories project. During each monologue, acclaimed Colorado violinist Anthony Salvo will be playing an underscore that we worked on together for each monologue. After the monologues, we'll have time for reflections and discussion between you and the monologist. But now, and I really want you to wake up the room in your own bodies. Now can we have a big, loud, wake up our bodies in the room applause to welcome Dr. Morgan Henry Seamont and Anthony Salvo.
Good evening, everyone. Like Kirsten said, my name is Morgan Seamont. I also happen to be the director of the Pride Office at CU Boulder. I use he, him pronouns, and I am here tonight to tell you a story. So let's begin. I'm on a grassy field with 2 other boys. We're maybe 9, 10 years old, and one of them is standing next to me, teaching me how to throw a football. Everything is right. The ball feels like it was just made to fit my hand. It is just rolling off my fingers and spinning in a perfect spiral all the way to the other guy who's catching it. I still remember the exact feeling of my fingers on those laces, the way the ball spun and spiraled and arced off into the distance, and the catch, it was complete, perfect. It makes me feel so strong and empowered. Oh, now I am so cool because I can throw a spiral football. I wish I could make that moment arc across my entire childhood. That moment where everything fit. I belonged. Simply a boy with the other boys throwing a football. But it's hard to articulate just how depressed I was as a kid. Not really because I was trans, or even because it was not okay to be trans. It was because there was no language for trans, no image, no possibility for what I was experiencing. I was young, living in a world that didn't talk about those things, in a small town where no one visibly identified that way. And because I didn't have the words to describe how I felt, and I didn't feel like anyone else I knew, I was truly lost, a total misfit. Not the kind of misfit that's quirky and weird, but the kind that cannot find anyone to commiserate, communicate, or connect with. I constantly thought about dying, constantly. Not just for a day, a few weeks, but for years and decades. It was torture. It was traumatizing, and I was so lonely. I wasn't able to connect with anyone, not even myself. At 13, I tried to kill myself. No one noticed. At 16, I tried to kill myself, and no one noticed. Had I known there was something called trans, been able to talk about it, been able to dress differently, been able to live differently, been able to stop trying to be the girl that I clearly wasn't, things might have been different. But none of that happened. I was left with this unknown depression, this sadness, this constant misalignment between what I wanted and what I was supposed to want and what I was supposed to do. And the constant fear of others, because if they see who you really are, to know that you hate all things girly and feminine, what would happen then? You would be considered such a freak. And since there was no way that I could imagine growing up to become a man, and I knew I could never really be a woman except as a failed woman, there was no future for me. Every day, I did the best I could to survive the pain, trying not to kill myself and let the pain out in other ways. I smashed glass bottles against cement walls to feel the shards cut into my hands. By being abusive to my body, by pushing and pushing through the pain, all I ever wanted was to be a boy. But I didn't know that was a possibility in the world. I didn't realize that was a possibility until I was 40. And what an epiphany that was. Oh my God, I could simply stop trying to be a woman. I could give that up. I could change my body to fit the gender I had always lived and expressed and felt myself to be. And unlike my first puberty at age 12, my second puberty at age 40 was such a gift. I loved it because each moment of my gender transition was a moment of becoming myself, of losing my breasts, of growing my beard, of finally being in a body where I didn't have to pretend I was a woman, where people assumed I was a man. In fact, being a man, being seen as a man, has finally let me stop fighting myself so much. And once I was recognized in the world as male, I could actually express femininity in ways I simply couldn't when my body was seen as female. Now that I look like your average middle-aged dad, no hair, got the beer gut going on, but now I can finally wear pink, because it doesn't call into question my gender identity, but does speak to the type of man that I choose to be. It's kind of funny because when I was a woman, I was a hyper-masculine butch woman. I loved camo clothing, army surplus, leather jackets, all of it. But now I find that those items of hyper-masculinity are toxic and they don't really reflect who I am. I am a man with a woman's history. I am a man who loves to do cross-stitch, to knit, to create art, to garden. I'd love to grow up and be an old cat lady. I am far more than what you see on the outside, but I had to change what people saw on the outside in order to really be free and able to live on the inside. Being seen as a woman was like being a fake. That was the aspect that lied to the world. What you see now is the whole truth of myself. I love being a man, a trans man. People sometimes ask me if I was reborn, would I choose to be trans and go through the struggle again? The answer is yes. There are so many gifts I have discovered by seeing the world from different perspectives. I'm in touch with my femininity, my masculinity, and everything in between. But honestly, I don't think I could survive the pain of growing up the way I did in that small town with no language and no possibilities. And without literally cutting open the scars of childhood in front of you now, I can't give you an idea of all the needless torture that I experienced, because it doesn't need to be that way. Really, What makes people so afraid of a child being trans, of a child you thought was a girl being a boy, of a child you assumed was a boy being a girl, or even a child saying, I don't want to be either gender? Why can't we just support our trans kids? Why are there hundreds of pieces of legislation across the country being presented right now against the recommendation of the American Medical Association, against the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and against the will of parents who are just trying to help their child choose life? And not suffer the way I suffered. Sometimes on a quiet, sunny afternoon, looking out over the park that's near my house, I see kids playing with a football, and I can't help but wonder what life might have looked like had my own childhood trauma been averted. If I had had the opportunity to transition earlier, to not live through the constant torture of not identifying as what everyone else thought me to be. What would life have been like had I been able to wear Spider-Man underoos or a Batman cape? What if someone had said there were hormone blockers and hormone replacement, and I could have gone through puberty with all the other guys? What if I could have simply been allowed to be the boy that threw the football, the perfect arc? Would it kill you to have let me be a boy who loved to throw a football? Would it kill you to catch it and throw it back? Because your unwillingness to let me be myself, to let trans kids be themselves, is literally killing us. And really, there's nothing about me that you should want dead. I am a good man. My journey around gender has simply been different from yours, and I wouldn't trade mine for anything. Please, just don't get in the way of what we need on our journey, and I wish you the best in yours. Catch.
Next time I expect everyone to sing along with We Are the Champions. I'm going to turn this.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It works on both pages.
Yes, I can read. All right. I'm so happy to be here, y'all. I'm feeling all sorts of ways. I'm feeling hot, I'm feeling cold, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling more alive than ever. Yeah, I really feel like I'm at a nexus of all sorts of emotions and times in my life. I'm coming up on the anniversary of, the event that put me in the wheelchair. I've been moving, and I also want to dedicate this monologue to my grandfather, who passed away earlier this week. Lots of beginnings, lots of endings, and that death has made me think about like this through line of electricity and shock, and I hope there's like some word or some sort of seed in this story that you get that feeling of electricity. My monologue is entitled Gender, Play, and Possibilities. Research suggests that a majority of trans people know they are trans before the age of 14. I am not one of those people. Being a girl never really bothered me, but being a woman did. Ironically, I was at my most feminine right before I came out, and I'm gonna be real with you, I was rocking it. My prom photo's proof. I'm in heels, nails done, wrapped in this glittering velvet prom dress. I had coiffed silver hair and this dark purple lipstick, and I loved it. I loved thrift shopping for the perfect matching accessories. I loved getting ready in the bathroom with my friends. I loved looking in the mirror and bringing out new sides of myself. And I love telling you about this photo now. But during my transition, it was hard to even look at that picture. While seeing surgeons and therapists and doctors and telling them over and over again which parts of myself I didn't like, I became accustomed to see my gender primarily as an experience of dysphoria, as an experience of pain and displacement and mismatch, because that's the narrative I had to repeat in order to gain access to gender-affirming care. Over time, my prom photos stopped reminding me of joy and started to represent duplicity, I guess. I had no way of reconciling my enjoyment of femininity with the fact that I didn't feel like a woman. So I began to understand my femininity as a false mask, as a way to garner approval, as a glamour that hid what was brewing under the surface. Only now am I able to really articulate that my gender didn't start from that place of pain. It started from a place of play. Freshman year of high school, my friends agreed to wear reversible bracelets to accommodate gender questioning and fluidity within the group. The light blue side was for feminine pronouns, the dark blue for masculine, and we could twist the bracelet for neutral pronouns. They were ugly, elastic things stitched together by yours truly on my very first sewing machine, and I may as well have done it with my eyes closed. The thread was knotted and gnarled and tangled, but the bracelets were beautiful because they were ours, because they tied us together. With those bracelets, we got good at switching pronouns. Sometimes we would flip the bracelets mid-conversation to see who noticed, and sometimes you could reach over and get away with flipping a cis person's, and we would laugh together as they squirmed in exaggerated discomfort. Nope, I'm a boy, thank you. There was a playfulness to it. Trying on different gendered language became no more taboo than trying on different clothes. I experimented with all three sets of pronouns, and without having any certainty about what my gender definitively was, I noticed that I liked neutral pronouns, and that in turn helped me give myself permission to try more masculine things. I noticed that I liked cologne and cargo shorts, I liked button-ups and baseball caps, and I really liked mixing it all in with my feminine staples. Finally, I gave myself permission to experiment with a binder, a compression garment that flattens your chest. I told nobody. It felt like a secret. There was a part of me that hoped that I wouldn't like it, that I could send it back and move on with my life. But as soon as I put it on, I knew. It took a few days, but I knew. I liked it. I really liked it. With it on, I felt more at home in my body. That was probably the first hard moment of my exploration. Realizing that if I wanted to be able to stay in that place that felt like home, if I wanted to live there instead of just visiting, I would need to change more than my clothes. I would need to change my body. For me, there was never a defining moment where I claimed the label of non-binary. This initial realization was less about discerning what my gender was, and more about becoming who I wanted to go through life as. I didn't think of it as transitioning. I was just expanding, growing branches that were the different parts of myself. I find it strange when people call non-binary genders unnatural, because for me, this is the most natural thing there was. Nature is not either or. Nature is dry and wet, hot and cold, forgiving and brutal. Authenticity is multiplicity. Fluidity is sincerity. And yet, as I started to look into medical transition, this conviction changed. I was exposed to the transmedicalist idea that only a certain portion of people seeking gender-affirming care are actually trans and actually deserving of receiving that care. I became haunted by this idea that I might be faking it, that I might be misinterpreting my feelings, that I might regret transition. There's a certain amount of anxiety that's normal when you make a major life decision, but my political environment magnified that anxiety to the point where it was disabling. In both medical and social spaces, I saw people accused of faking transgender because of how they dressed, how they spoke, how they styled their hair, and suddenly, my gender fluidity began to feel like gender fraudulence. As someone whose gender didn't emerge until puberty, as someone whose childhood isn't characterized entirely by tomboyishness, as someone who doesn't even necessarily feel like they were born in the wrong body, the only way I could medically justify my gender was through a language of pain. These are the parts of my body that I don't like. These are the parts that need to change. This is not a matter of joy, it is a matter of survival. Framing my story that way didn't mean lying about my experiences. I very much met the criteria for dysphoria. The problem was I didn't meet it every day, all the time, perfectly. But between online spaces and doctors' offices, I subconsciously learned that I would be most readily validated if I turned down the volume on that fluidity and settled into an aesthetic that matched my identity. So, for a hot minute there, I focused on trying to rid myself of gender markers, cropping to a neutral pixie cut, wearing neutral blank shirts, neutral Chuck Taylors, taking hormones to achieve a neutral sounding voice. I never took the time to question that neutral always meant masculine. There's a photo of me post-transition, several years after prom. It was my contact photo for a long time, the one that automatically gets sent over iMessage. It's a photo of me at a Christian wedding. Button up, hemmed slacks, shiny shoes, the whole 9 yards. I looked good. I looked how I wanted to look at that time. But that version of myself now feels as foreign as the one from prom. On the other side of my transition, I have the opportunity to share with you a fuller story that is more about discovery than dysphoria. I came into my non-binary identity not because I was repulsed by my femininity, but because I loved it, at least parts of it. Femininity helped me learn the language of style, of aesthetic, of taste and confidence. And the problem wasn't that I was using the wrong half of the alphabet. The problem was that I was using only half of the alphabet. I began to truly blossom after being safely on the other side of top surgery and hormones, when I no longer needed to limit my options to accommodate my dysphoria or prove my dysphoria to others. My transition was not the culmination of my growth, but the prerequisite to my evolution. Now that I feel at home in my body and alleviated from the burden of proof, I can live into my version of non-binary. My version of non-binary isn't about neutrality, it's about multiplicity. It's about many truths, many versions of me. It's been a few years since that wedding, and my style's a lot different now. I'm drawn to clashing patterns, to chaotic mixes of feminine and masculine attire, and I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. So if you can't figure out my gender, I'm okay with that. One time, a flustered cis person addressed me as man, and it was actually very affirming. I remember when I was a kid, maybe age 8 or 9, and I asked my parents to let me wear swim trunks to the pool instead of a girl's bathing suit. I was a curious sight to others, wet strands of long hair curling and clinging to my bare chest. One time, a kid came up to me, a stranger, and asked, "Are you a boy or a girl?" What I experienced in that moment was not shame or embarrassment. It was indignation and confusion. Why is my answer important to this person? I realize now what I already intuitively knew at that age. It's not me who doesn't understand the laws of gender. It's you who doesn't understand my freedom. My freedom is about doing what makes me feel good. My freedom is about delight and celebration and self-understanding. My freedom is one of the greatest gifts I have to give. Transition for me personally was less about treating the dysphoria of the adult and more about reclaiming the joy of the child. It was about having the courage to soften into the parts of myself that felt scary and foreign. It was about honoring my fleeting thoughts, my wildest dreams, my roaring nightmares, about holding their jagged edges to my chest until they softened and called me home. I believe that the parts of ourselves that we are most afraid of are often the parts that have the capacity to liberate us the most. And the greatest gift of my transition is not a sense of certainty and security, but a sense of possibility, permeability, and volatility. The ability to stay in inquiry and say, I don't know. The ability to know my body and say, I'm hurting. The ability to meet chaos with a sense of wonder. The ability to constantly reforge my expectations of myself. The ability to show all of myself so that others can love all of me. 8-year-old me didn't have the words to explain all this to that kid at the swimming pool. But they did the next best thing. They simply shrugged, jumped into the water, and playfully swam away.
Just a sec. Directly.
That's you, more or less. I mean, I could work around it.
No, I don't want it. You're, just use your big voice.
Okay.
All right. Ruby Lopez!
Hi, everyone. My name is Ruby Sophia Lopez, and I think today I'd like to dedicate my monologue to some new friends, specifically my friends over at an organization called Fortaleza Familiar. I'm actually wearing this shirt right now. We are a small but scrappy team of all queer and trans people of color that serves exclusively queer and trans people of color in the Denver metro area. Yeah. So if you are or you know someone that is a young melanated person that is also queer and wants to get involved, let me know. Come talk to me after the show. My monologue is called It's a Girl. So it's a birth story. July 22nd, 1991. A newlywed couple, two small-town ranchers from northern Mexico, gave birth to a child in the suburbs of Chicago. The couple and their doctor were both so sure that the child was going to be a girl that they didn't even bother with boy names. They had a whole list of names for their baby girl and thought they would know which one to choose as soon as they saw her. But when that baby emerged and drew her first breath, the room, for a moment, went silent with shock because their baby girl had a penis. A sudden change of course happened, and they decided that they were wrong. Their baby must be a boy. Now, I wish I could go back in time, right during that brief moment of confusion, and say, whoa, hey, hold up. Neither you nor the doctor are wrong. She's a girl. Like, don't be led astray by the genitals. I assure you, she's a girl. But unfortunately, I can't step back in time. The young parents and the doctor didn't honor what they intuited. This baby girl was raised to be a boy, and not knowing any better, she went along with what she was told. As a small child, living as a boy was okay. My body and the body of the little girlfriends I played with were about the same. No facial or body hairs, a slender face and frame. For all intents and purposes, I was a carefree tomboy living in the sweet, sweet ignorance of youth. But when puberty hit, now that messed me up. That was the beginning and the end for me. It was now my turn to have the confusion that my parents felt when their baby girl had a penis. But for me, well, that moment never really ended. I resented every body hair, every crack of my voice, the broadening of my shoulders and jawline. I hated it. I was constantly shaving everything, and it didn't feel right. It did not fit the person who I knew myself to be. But there was one thing that did fit. My mom's jeans. I love them. At age 14, I would sneak into my parents' bedroom and take them from my mother's closet. Girl pants, I would think to myself, so cool, so forbidden, so edgy. I go back to my bedroom and put them on. Wow, the stretch, the tightness, oh, I love it. I put on some emo music, Hawthorne Heights or My Chemical Romance, as I got ready for school. I straighten my bangs and lay them carefully across my face so that my left eye is partially covered. And then I tease the hair on the back of my head, and then lots of hairspray to hold it all together. I pick one of the many tight black band t-shirts that I own and adorn it with a studded belt. As soon as I get to school, I finish my look by putting eyeliner under each eye and adding a fake lip ring. I look at myself in the mirror and smile. I see the reflection of this angsty, feminine, androgynous young person looking back at me, and in that moment, I love myself. I feel alive. And I'm not having to deal with people challenging my gender because my look and clothing choices put me at the center of emo culture in the early 2000s, which was a pretty androgynous aesthetic. Like, guys looked like girls and girls looked like guys. And I really felt like myself in that culture. I would go from class to class, basking happily in my androgyny all day. That is, until it's time to go home. Wipe off the makeup and remove the lip ring. My parents think I'm strange, but I don't, because my friends thought I was cool, and that's all that mattered to me. At age 16, I found myself in love with Lauren, another high school girl that hung out with the same crowd I did. We would sit in her room, me in my tight girl pants, slip-on Vans, and tight black shirt, her in very similar clothing and swoopy bangs across her face. Every sappy emo song I listened to was about her. I never loved someone so much that I loved Lauren. And nothing was extraordinary about my first little heartthrob, except one tiny thing that nagged at me: envy. I didn't just love her, I also wanted to be like her so badly. And I didn't know how to process that, so I pushed that feeling deep down into a little box that lives in my subconscious, a box that is very clearly labeled, warning, do not open. When I went to college, I left most of my high school friends and the emo scene behind me. I decided to work harder to be the man that my parents and society expected of me. I traded my angsty androgynous aesthetic for a preppy jock look. At that point, I was already a second-degree black belt, but I intensified my training on combat sports, started lifting weights and drinking protein shakes. I joined the frat and hung out with the bro guys and tried to be just like them. This is a remnant from the bro guys. I reassured myself about my masculinity. I can't be a queer. I'm not gay. I've always been attracted to girls. And then Amanda. Me and Amanda had grown to be very close over the 3 years that we spent together in college. And sure enough, attraction develops. I confess my feelings, we enjoy a good evening together, and yet there are these same old desires. And eventually, my feelings of gender envy will sabotage our budding relationship. Messing things up with Amanda, that was the final straw. I could no longer hide from this repeating dynamic. There's something queer about me, but I can't explain it. I know I'm not gay in a men-loving men kind of way, and yet I'm not masculine enough for the straight girls that I kept falling for. And so this question starts to emerge, the question I've been trying so hard to suppress all this time. What if I'm transgender? And that thought would fill me with such an immense shame that I felt that the only solution was to drink. Drink to the point of forgetting. I withdrew from life, from my friends, from school, and moved back in with my parents. Pretty soon, I only leave my room to go to the liquor store. Days became a blur. I would wake up, wish I had not been born, curse God, drink myself into oblivion, and repeat. I did this day after day for years, until any semblance of sanity that I had left was gone. But no amount of alcohol could keep me from facing my own truth. You know how sometimes when you're trying to avoid something and the world keeps giving you signs that take you back to that person or thing that you're trying to avoid? Well, yeah, that kept happening to me. I'm in my room, drinking and singing along to this punk band against me, a band I had grown up listening to. And you know, I'd always really heard myself in their lyrics. And one day, I find out that their lead singer has just come out as trans. And I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. You gotta be kidding me. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that music off. I grab another drink and turn on the TV, see what's on Netflix. This show, Orange is the New Black, piques my interest. And bam, there's Laverne Cox, this stunning Black trans woman. And there's no escaping her. She is in scene after scene, and I'm in my room blushing with embarrassment and shame, and like, how dare she just come into my room with her beautiful transness? So I turned that off too. A few months later, I'm at their liquor store, and there's Laverne Cox again, this time on the cover of Time magazine. And it reads, "The Transgender Tipping Point." Y'all, it's 2014, and now I have arrived at my own tipping point. The hidden box inside my subconscious mind is breaking open. It's time to take action. I know who and what I am. A woman. I'm a woman. Now, I either need to face the truth and risk losing everything and everyone in my life, or choose to die quietly with my self-image and fragile sense of masculinity intact. I make a decision, and at 22, my story is going to be a death story. But of course, I didn't actually die. I'm right here, y'all. Instead, I gained consciousness on the hardwood floor of my bedroom. My father, nudging me with his foot, an empty bottle of vodka lies open on the floor next to me, alongside with an empty bottle of pills. I am alive just in time to see the look of utter disappointment on his face. He shakes his head and walks away. Well, shit, I think to myself. That didn't go as planned. Feeling defeated by my failed attempt to take the easy way out, I decide it's time for the harder choice: acceptance. I got myself off that floor, did some research, and found a good psych hospital on the north side of Chicago with a special wing for LGBTQ+ patients. After a few days in the hospital and refusing to come out of my room, I finally decided to go to group therapy. And that's when I see her. Sitting right across the circle from me, by some wild stroke of destiny, is a beautiful trans woman. I had yet to meet another trans person in real life, and I can't stop looking at her and wondering, like, does she know? Like, can't she see me? The real me? The me that's been hiding all my life? Can she see that I am a woman just like her? And I suddenly understand there actually is a way for me to be in this world. I can be like her. I can be a trans woman. Surprise, it's a birth story after all. Now, everyone knows there's usually a lot of pain in giving birth, the pushing, the screaming, the blood. Well, my birth into becoming a woman is full of all that shit, except my pain was more existential and emotional, like when I told my parents I was not their son, but their daughter. No, my dad said, his jaw clenched tight. No, you're confused. No, I say. Actually, for the first time in my life, I feel less confused. Let me put it this way, Dad. I'm not happy about this either. This is not a choice that I'm making, but my life is on the line. And to deny this truth any longer is to condemn myself to a very, very dark place in my mind, and it is literally killing me. So, you can either have a healthy, living daughter, or you can have a dead son. My father looked at the floor and said, well, at least if you were dead, I would not be so embarrassed. I pray that someday my dad will be more embarrassed at the fact that he said this to his own child, rather than the fact that his child is trans. It has taken me almost 9 years, not 9 months, to birth myself. And these years have been full of twists and turns. I started physically transitioning on hormone replacement therapy, HRT, shortly after coming out to my parents. Then I came out to everyone else in my life. I lost friends and family, was homeless, but then I made new friends and family. I moved to Washington, D.C., fell in love, fell out of love, paused my transition, got sober, moved to San Francisco, lived with Buddhist monks, moved back to Chicago, fell in and out of love again, resumed my transition, moved out to Boulder, came out to people all over again, legally changed my name, had my first gender-affirming surgery, became an advocate for trans people of color, had my second gender-affirming surgery, moved to Denver, and now, here I am. And the truth is, throughout all that hardship and confusion, I've really, really grown to love the badass transsexual dyke that I am. My story could have been a death story so many times, but it's not. And I am so grateful that it's not. Sometimes I think of some of the ridiculous statements I've read as an advocate for the trans community. A classic is this false claim that HRT doesn't help with dysphoria, suicidality, depression, etc. But let me tell you, the truth is, I am the evidence. My life is the evidence that those claims cannot possibly be true. You see, against all odds, I'm still alive. And on top of that, I'm happy. But it isn't just HRT and gender-affirming surgery that has helped me beat those odds time and time again. No, it's been my community. It took the help of many amazing women in my life to hold mirrors up to me to help me find myself. It took behavioral health professionals and the loving patience of people in the recovery community to restore me to sanity. Well, like, relatively speaking. And of course, there was the social support I received from queer communities everywhere that I have lived. The chosen family that I have made along the way. Like many queer and trans people around the world, I have had to slowly birth myself and reparent myself as an adult. It takes a village, they say, and you know what? I am fortunate enough to have mine. So congratulations, yes, it is a girl.
All right. Again, one big hand for Dr. Morgan Henry Seamont, Ray Watson, Ruby Lopez, and Anthony Sello. all should come out and get a bow. Come out and get a bow. We have the pleasure of having a conversation with you guys for a little bit of time. And we always start with no questions. No questions. Just check in with your body for a moment, would you? Just, if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, close your eyes. But the big thing is notice what you're feeling in your body for a moment, having heard these three very different stories of what it is to be a blossoming human being. And in a moment, what I'd like to start with is if anyone would like to tell briefly to the monologist anything about the impact of hearing their stories so they know what you heard. So you can open up your eyes, and I will run around and get my exercise, so make me run, and have a comment. So does anyone like to share with the monologist what it felt like, or any feelings you're having, or the impact? And this is about you. I don't see a hand point. Thank you so much. And if you're comfortable, tell your name just because it's a small world and they may see you in the grocery store.
Sure. I'm Kelly, she, her pronouns. And such relief and joy to be in a community that supports you and to be in a space to hear the freedom of those stories. And at the same time, such sadness for the difficulty to finally getting to this place in your lives, and the difficulty for those who are living in states that don't support the lives of trans children.
Awesome, thank you. Another comment, feeling? All right. All right, I'm going to get down here. First, I have the pleasure. Thank goodness. I just sit at a desk all day. Life is hard.
Hey, what's up? My name is Hayden. My pronouns are they, them. I really, winging this, really appreciate your stories. I know Ruby, and so it's cool to hear your full story. Thank you. And, well, not your full story. You have a much bigger life. And I think I just really appreciate the variance and the nuance that you all brought to, like, the conversation, right, about being trans. And I think, right, is that your name, the person in the middle? Yeah. I really identify with a lot of your story as, like, a non-binary person who's also physically transitioned, and just being like, but I think you all spoke to the brilliance of, like, once we are able to, like, really be in our bodies and find ourselves, like, how much possibility exists, right? The freedom and the just, like, to explore and be so expansive, and that's just something they can't fight. And so I just really identified with you and appreciate you naming so many things that really struck me. So thanks for naming your story and putting it into the world.
All right.
Hi, I'm Amber, she, her pronouns. Ray, when you'd said at the beginning that you hope that electricity that you're feeling, that we would feel that as well, I really did feel that when you were talking about your transition becoming the start of you becoming who you are, but I felt that in each of your stories. Ruby, Anthony, all of you, you just could feel the joy of knowing who you are and being able to be who you are. And I could just feel that joy and that electricity go through my body. So thank all three of you for sharing your stories and for those beautiful monologues.
Hello, I'm Gene. It's just impossible for me to believe that we have four such brilliant people on the stage at one time. You four are phenomenally amazing to me. That brings up the fact that not all trans people are as brilliant as you are. And I feel so sorry for those who cannot articulate as well the hell they've been through and the rainbow on the other side of that hell that you seem to be experiencing. And another thing, every day I hear on the radio of some organization that has freedom in their name that is against freedom. And I am so glad to hear your three stories and know that there are five others, some of which I've heard, that are truly free stories. And I hope that one day those people that say they want freedom will come around to recognizing that what freedom really is. And I thank you for your expression of that, because you helped change, not change my mind, but inform my mind about who you really are.
Oh, thank you. Hello. Ooh. Hi, I'm Lucan, he, him pronouns. I just want to let you all know you all look amazing. I know clothing is one of those things that's sometimes the first and easiest way to physically show who you are on the inside, and you all are serving it. So I just want to let you know you all look amazing this evening. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Just 1 second. By the way, I appreciate the group effort to get me. That's right.
Hey everyone, my name's Tina, she, her pronouns. It's weird to hear your voice over a microphone. I just wanted to say, Morgan, it really resonated with me, your discussions about loneliness. I think I've sort of fallen into those places at various times in my life, and so it was just really cathartic in a way to sort of hear somebody else personifying those feelings, and sort of, yeah, just getting to have that like resonated and reflected back was really nice. So, yeah, and then kind of building on that, and then this idea of sort of chosen family and community, and sort of, you know, the positive spin on that side of things. So, yeah, I just wanted you to know that clearly that really resonated with me. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Awesome. Beautiful. Would you do me? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Bob, he, him. I've worked with Motus in the past with immigration, and I really wish I had seen this before, because one of the things I do is I'm coordinating the Erie Pride Festival, and we get around 3,000 people, so it's reasonably large, and I really wish we had room this year to have you included. So I'm going to think about how we can do it for next year to get you guys in, because it's just an amazing thing, in particular for the safety of the kids. And we work a lot with children to try to help them when they're younger, so they don't have to go through a lot of what you went through. So thank you very much.
Erie 2025 already on the calendar. Any more comments before I turn it to the monologues? Could you do me a favor?
You're all so beautiful. My name is Diane. I just admire your courage. I'm sitting here ready to cry. Listening to your stories, I just admire your courage and strength. all that you've been through, all the adversity. You are a testament. I'm honored to be a witness and to share this space with you. I'm in awe and I'm humbled.
The nice thing is that courage is contagious. So the courage of these three is moving through each of you. I can't wait to find out what happens.
I'm Patty, she, her, and I work as a psychotherapist, and I have a large part of my practice is with the LGBT community. And I learn so much every day. I want to thank you for opening my eyes in several ways. I have often had the opportunity and the privilege to write the letters based on the WPATH guidelines for the transformative surgeries for my clients. And I hear them, and they're my kids. And I mean, they are my kids. But what I've heard from you guys is going to help me make those letters even more real, even more impassioned, and more forceful, so that my kids can get what they deserve to be who they are, because I love them. So thank you.
I am going to bring the mic back to you guys in just a second.
Hi, my name is Oliver. I use he, they pronouns. I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful. As a queer kid, I knew when I was really young, but I never thought that there were adults who were like me. I always thought I was faking it. So I just think it's so beautiful. And y'all are so brave for standing up here and talking about your stories. And it's just really empowering for me to hear these beautiful stories. So thank you.
All right. So Morgan, Justin, can we go till 8:30? All right. I have the mic. He had no choice but to say yes. Power. I'm going to hand this to you. Anything that you would like to say? We can open up to questions in a moment. But if you'd like to say anything about the impact of what it felt like to perform today, or hearing all this feedback, like anything that you would like to reflect back, each of you.
Yeah, thank you just for all the comments. And to my young person back there, I would like to point out that you two are very brave. So thanks for coming out.
The first thing that came up when Kirsten asked about impact is this feeling that I often sit with, especially as a disabled person. Like, it's hard to get outside. I spend a lot of time alone, a lot of time in my house, and I just like look out the window and imagine myself as part of the world. And then moments like this, I really get to feel like part of the world. Yeah, thank you guys.
I love that Kirsten said that courage is contagious, because that's one of the things that I hope you all walk away with. We're often sort of preaching to the choir when it's other people perhaps that need to hear it more. So I hope you have the courage to take our stories into the world and share them. So thank you so much for your love and support. We love it.
Now, before we end, if there are a couple questions for the monologist, or Anthony for that matter, just the gorgeous musician. But do you have any questions for the monologist? You don't have to. All right. I'm going to move hands. I saw yours. Oh, you're pointing. Thank you for helping.
She's my best friend. Yeah,
Oh my God.
I know, my spotter over there. Yeah. I'm just generally curious what it's like to collaborate when you have your stories in the music, and what that process is like.
We could also go. This is, you might be curious to know, this is the first time, my first time at least, doing this with the music. Like, today's the first time we did that rehearsal, and nailed it, right? This is where Kirsten comes in as an instrumental piece. The decisions, at least I feel like it's different for every monologue, but in this case, the timing of everything, the decisions about the music kind of got made or like presented to me. It's like, you always have a voice in this, you always have the choice to say no, but here's what we're thinking for you. And the justification behind using Vivaldi's Spring was that my story has so much nuance in it, and so much in it that resists like dominant narratives of transgender stories, that it's powerful to pair that with music that is so ubiquitous and familiar to people. And I love that. Yeah. I don't know if you wanted to talk. I just handed the mic to you.
I would just like to say, again, big thank you to Anthony. I feel like the music really does take it to another level. And as performing-wise, it's a very different experience performing it with music than just without music. And I would far more prefer doing it with music. So, thanks.
Anything here or a question?
The piece that was chosen for me was "We Are the Champions," which ironically came out when I was in high school, and our girls basketball team went to state that year and won it, and that was the song. So loved it.
I knew I was channeling something. There you go. Another question? I saw a hand somewhere. No. Any other question? Oh, I see. 1 second. That's right. Where am I?
Hi. I had a question for the three of you regarding, I guess, athletics that are very gendered. Like, there's a lot of athletics even today that not even like local running and climbing that aren't necessarily gendered, but when you compete in them, they are very gendered. Do you really have any, advice or comment about how transgender, both at the kids level or at the youth level and at the adult level, how to contend with that?
No pressure.
Yeah, that's a small question. Let me answer that just quick. I mean, obviously, that's where trans kids are being attacked, or that's one of the fronts that trans kids are being attacked on, is their involvement in sport. I mean, it's complicated. There's a lot that goes into it. I don't know how, as a nation, we're going to resolve it. but I know that we need to stay strong enough to keep fighting for inclusion at all levels of sport for everyone. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it's really more important in my mind that we support the trans kids that want to play sport, that we figure out a way for them to do it even if it's not through school. So there are ways to make sure that we support our kids, that they get to do what they want and get to grow up and be the person that they want to be.
I'm still baking.
You're still
yeah,
thinking.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've been an athlete most of my life, and still, I mean, I would still consider myself active as a 30-something-year-old can be. But yeah, it's tough, honestly, and I feel like a lot of the changes has to happen at levels that are like kind of above our head. But there are things that we can do. Like, for example, I do Thai kickboxing, and I used to go every single day, and I knew that I was at the right gym because the receptionist was a trans woman. And as soon as I saw her, I'm just like, oh, yeah, okay, where do I sign up for a membership, you know? And I felt really safe going there. She wasn't the only queer person. There was a couple of other queer people there. And it's still a very, overall, kind of like a masculine environment, right? But I felt safe because there were people there and there were allies that weren't queer also. But then one day, my friend, the receptionist, a trans woman, she also practiced, but she left one day. She wasn't there anymore. I remember feeling like for someone that I only talked about at the gym, I felt sad. I felt like a loss had happened, like a major loss, because really I felt like I had lost a good chunk of my safety in the gym, because all of a sudden now I'm the only trans woman at the gym, right? And so what I'm getting at is, while all these legislators and adults stuck in their ways figure their stuff out and like figure out a way to reformat sports, something we can do is just buddy up, go with more people, just queer up the place, roll in with a queer crew, you know? Yeah. And so that would be something I would say is a lot of it is out of our control, but we can bring friends. Friends are great.
Yeah, that's definitely where my mind went as well. My mind went to a similar place in terms of I can't speak to the larger reforms that we need to do of existing sports organizations, but I know the power of making queer spaces for ourselves and queer events for ourselves. I just went to queer roller derby for the first time in Denver. Guys, it was fantastic. Just like so many different genders and bodies out on one playing field, like made me think about sports differently, and that's where my mind went.
Awesome. Motus will be raising money for the queer crew team right now, and then everyone will get the sweatshirt, and we'll come in moss. So,
hey, I'm Lodi. Thank you all so much. I'll mix it is really weird hearing your voice. The impact piece, and then I'll ask my question, but one of the things that stood out was just the like extra and the unnecessary level of suffering, that life is just hard enough, and then to have transphobia shade and shape those formative years that are just hard enough as is. And I'm interested in how we move towards taking away that extra, which all of you spoke to. And I guess my question bleeds into that in the sense, wow, it's really hard to talk in a microphone. Thank you. Yeah, but I hear myself saying the words, and then I lose my thought. That's great. I will try to not listen to the echo in my head. There's something really threatening to cisgender folks about transness, and I'm guessing that it has something to like how solid we've all been conditioned to think gender is. And I feel like the backlash that there is something that is corely threatening somehow that all of us could be liberated from. And I just am curious to hear your thoughts about how, at the very beginning, Kirsten said, everybody's oppressed by our gender systems. And I would just love to know, what freedom is available to those cis folks in the audience.
I'll take this first. A hard question to answer. But what came up for me was, it's something that one of the activists that I follow pretty closely, Alok Vadmenon, talks about a lot. They talk about how transphobia is a manifestation of cis people's own feelings of confinement around gender, right? It's coming from a place, even when they don't recognize it, it's often coming from that place of rigidity. And that is why, all transformation has to start with the grief, with the unlearning, right? As tempting and as sexy as it is to jump right into the brave, the courageous, there really is that core of mourning and reckoning that has to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of my exploration, like I said, was when I was seen as a woman, all I wanted to be was hyper-masculine. Like, I stared at encyclopedia pictures of uniforms in the military forever just because they were male, right? But as Ray says, how all of you have been conditioned, right? All of you men have been conditioned not to cry, not to like pink, not to like feminine things. And part of being gender expansive is just letting some of that go. You can still identify as cisgender, but let some of that go. I don't know who you are, but you're wearing a white button-down shirt, like, try a floral shirt. But the same thing goes for women too. It's just that women have a lot more ability to express a masculine form of gender. Like, my mom never wore pants because women didn't wear pants back in that day. And now all women can wear pants, and we see that for the majority of the time. So look at ways that you can expand the way that you express gender. I used to teach a class, and I would challenge my students to do that. And I had a male student who wanted to wear fingernail polish. But the minute he put it on, he could not go out. He couldn't even finish painting all of his nails because it's been so conditioned not to do feminine things, right? So I challenge all of you men in the audience to put on fingernail polish. You don't have to go out, but what would happen if you did, right? We just need to blow up the rules a little bit.
Yeah, I firmly believe that maybe not like my kids or my grandkids, but maybe my great-grandkids will live in a world where, for all intents and purposes, we could just say like post-gender, right? Gender, at least as we know it. Because it's true. I think our existence is a direct threat to the binary gender system, which is so deeply fundamental to the way we perceive the world that, quite frankly, I think to some people it's it's so abrasive that it's kind of like a small existential crisis, right? Yeah, and so I think that people will fight tooth and nail. My first language was Spanish, a Romance language, which is, in the language itself, is very gendered. Everything has like a feminine or a masculine gendering. And so like, it's just like stuff like that. It's just like, it's so deeply ingrained in everything we think about. And to Ray's point, yeah, I 100% agree. I think that being trans, being visibly, visibly transgressing gender norms can evoke some sort of anger in folks where like, but it's an anger that has to do with like, I have to conform to the norms, why don't you? Like, what are you doing? Get in line. You know, and so it's this own sort of like maybe like a smaller oppression that one has, because certainly not everyone falls cleanly into this is just woman, this is just feminine, and this is just masculine. Like, that's not how the world is. And so, yeah, I think that's another thing too. It's like some folks will just, maybe it's triggering a little something inside of them too, right? Like, I think everyone's a little gay.
There are two very important questions, and we're really out of time. And so I'm going to ask people, both folks, to ask their question and just choose what you feel like you want to respond to, because I do need to honor the Longmont Museum, but I also hear important questions.
Well, hopefully this is that important. But so one way in which I've found that a lot of queer and trans people gain courage is through community. Like we've talked about courage a little bit here, and you've also talked about community yourselves. And so I was just wondering, you know, I think there's a lot of people who could potentially be great allies in the audience, but don't have community to build to sort of support that. And I just wondered if you wanted to speak to that, like a little bit, like how do you see that going forward? Like, you know, Morgan, you sort of challenged people to go out in the world and share these stories. But if we ask people to share these stories alone, then that's also just going to be really hard. So I wondered if you wanted to comment on that.
Great, so hold that. We have a community question.
Buenas noches. My name is Ingrid. I use she, her, hers pronouns. And my question, either one of you can respond it, but I'm thinking of you, Ruby. I would like you to address a message to our beloved community here, sharing a little bit about the intersection between being a non-white person in a community that is dominant white. And obviously our identities are interrelated, and the Latino community in our community is not different than other communities, right? But they're layered systems of oppression, one on top of the other. And I would love for you to address this audience and share a quick message.
Awesome.
Yeah, just two really small questions. Cool. Okay, so just, I guess, short, non-rambling answer. Yes, I mean, obviously having more marginalized identities is harder. That's the whole concept of like intersectional social justice thinking. And I think it's especially prevalent in like a lot of the folks that I work with, which is like queer and trans people of color. Just because statistically speaking, people of color that are queer will have a higher suicidality rate, higher success at suicidality, higher rate of depression, anxiety, and all, you know, unhealthy behavioral health things. That's just a fact. And it's also a fact that being a person of color oftentimes correlates with also being low income, which of course increases the odds of not having a good time while being queer even more. And so it just becomes this thing where like, I'm just imagining like Sisyphus, right? Like rolling this proverbial stone up the hill, except every identity that you add to it adds a layer. There's another stone, right, to be rolled up. And so eventually, Sisyphus is going to get tired and just going to get squashed, right, by the weight of these things. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult. There's also a lot of cultural things. And one, I said I wasn't going to ramble, and I rambled. But one last thing is that I read about something like colonized societies tend to take on whatever morals and values that the colonizing society had at the time and amplify that to an extreme. And so that is, I believe, why so many people from Latin America, for example, are not just kind of Catholic, they're super Catholic, right? And so there's machismo is a common thing. So there's all these other things that are just play, and it's just an infinitely complicated factor. And as far as finding like people, it's not easy. I feel like I have to be very intentional to go out and meet folks to have community. But the plus side is if you're a sapphic person, you could just date people, and then once you break up, they're your friends. So that's how you make friends.
Yeah, I think I'm circling around this piece of intersectionality. I feel like that's a great place to land. And I don't know if I'll be answering any questions directly, but I think the thing that I want to bring into this space, when I think about community as a disabled person, I think about access, right? Of like, when people don't have access to community, why is that happening? Are there buses involved? Is there childcare involved? Is there illness involved? What are all the moving pieces that make someone available to like attend things and connect? When we think about community, that should be first and foremost.
I think what Ray is also leaning into is that thought of allyship, that you have to create that sense of community. But allyship can happen in many ways. Maybe it does happen with us standing up on a stage talking about our stories, but maybe it happens that you run across a coworker tomorrow and you tell them about this event and how it moved you and how it helped you understand the variety of different experiences that trans people have. Maybe it means you go volunteer with Out Boulder County for the summer or whatever. Maybe it means you go to your very first Pride event this June. So there's many different ways and levels. Like, I don't call myself a sign-carrying sort of protest person. I do my work in much more one-on-one versions with students. So you may not see me at the state capitol, although ironically I was at the state capitol 2 weeks ago with Motus. But I'm not that sort of activist. I'm much more sort of individualistic and ground up, and let's work behind the scenes. So it's kind of like pick your adventure and go for it.
Awesome. It's so hard to end, but I want to respect the monologist time, the beautiful musicians, and your time, because we need to be well rested because we have lots of things to do tomorrow, yeah? Lots of things. So 2 little businesses that are important before we leave. In addition to these 3 amazing monologues you heard from Transformatives tonight, there are 5 other different and unique monologues on tour with Transformative Stories. Please consider bringing a story, and ideally, I like to have 3 stories, to your community, organization, church, synagogue, mosque, or school. Motus also has over 20 other autobiographical monologists on tour supporting conversations on immigration or the criminal legal system. Talk to me after the show about any of this. It's really important that you know what's going on with Motus because we're just doing super fun work. And you're going to leave inspired and encouraged and reminded of what it means to be human. So if you would like to be on our mailing list or hear about future Motus performances, make sure that you pick up a flyer on the table outside, and ideally either use the QR code outside on the table to sign up for our email list, or use the hand-lettered sign-in page, and I will have someone, not me, type it out because I can't do it. anymore. So please do that. And before we leave, I just want to again thank the Longmont Museum and Cultural Center for inviting us, the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee for helping support this. They do so many cool things. And a big hand for the amazing Dr. Morgan Henry Seamont, Ray Watson, Ruby Lopez, and Anthony Salvo. Good night.